Have you ever looked at a flower or a tree and just kind of wondered, what's actually going on in there? I mean, we usually see plants as just part of the scenery, beautiful, but passive. But what if I told you that the quiet green world all around us is actually full of beings that can remember, learn, and maybe even anticipate the future? Today, we're diving into the pretty wild science of plant memory.
You know, this is the exact question I had when I first heard this story from a researcher named Thilo Henning. He was studying this one particular plant, and what he found, well, it basically challenges everything we thought we knew. How could a plant possibly store a memory? Where would it even put it? It's a question that opens up this incredible, hidden world. So here's what we're going to explore. We'll start with that one amazing flower. Then we'll look at the memory of winter that lots of common plants have. We're going to meet plants that actually hunt, count, and make choices. And finally, we'll tackle the big one. What does all this mean for how we define intelligence itself and how we see our place in the world? Okay, so our story kicks off high in the Peruvian Andes with a plant called Nasa poissiana. And yeah, it's a pretty alien-looking flower. It's got these really elaborate structures and some nasty stinging hairs. But trust me, its most remarkable feature is something you can't even see. So Henning and his colleague noticed something, well, kind of baffling. The flower would raise its stamen, that's the part with the pollen, right before a bee was scheduled to arrive. It looked like it was predicting the future. But really, it was just remembering the past. And this isn't just some built-in genetic instinct. We're talking about a flexible individual memory. The flower was actually learning from its own unique experiences.
And here's how they proved it, which is just fascinating. The researchers basically pretended to be bees. For one group of plants, they'd show up every 15 minutes. For another, they stretched it to every 45 minutes. The next day, you guessed it, the plants had learned. The 15-minute group was on a fast 15-minute schedule, and the 45-minute group had adjusted to the slower pace. The plant had literally stored the time gap in its memory and changed what it was doing.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's one weird flower from the Andes. But this ability to remember stuff isn't some rare exotic thing. In fact, you've probably seen it in your own garden or even your kitchen. For a lot of plants, it's a basic tool for survival. The official name for it is vernalization. A great example is garlic. You plant a clove in the fall, and it has to sit through that long, cold winter before it does anything. What's happening is that the clove is essentially counting the cold days. It's building a memory of winter. If it doesn't get that long chill, it just won't sprout. And this memory isn't just a neat trick. It's a high-stakes survival strategy. A plant has to be absolutely sure that winter is really over before it burns all its energy on new growth. By remembering how long it's been cold, it can make a calculated bet that spring has truly arrived. One mistake, one warm spell that tricks it into sprouting too early, and that could be fatal. So plants can remember the seasons, but it gets even crazier. Some plants use memory and counting to do things that, well, they look a lot like hunting.
Let's talk about the Venus flytrap. We all know it moves, but what's really going on is short-term memory. It's also a counter. One little hair gets touched, it waits. Could be just a raindrop, but if a second hair is touched within about 20 seconds, bam, the trap snaps shut. That's a good sign it's a struggling insect. And then it keeps counting touches up to 5 before it commits all that energy to start digesting. It stores the count, makes a decision, and then acts.
And then there's this character, the daughter vine. This thing is a straight-up predator. It has no leaves, no chlorophyll, it just hunts. You can watch it in time-lapse videos, and its little tip circles around, literally sniffing the air for the chemical scent of another plant. It can even tell the difference between a tasty tomato plant and a not-so-great wheat stalk, and it will actively grow towards the tomato. Once it latches on, it gives the host a quick taste test, and if it's a good one, it counts out how many coils it needs to sink in and start feeding.
And this is where it gets really interesting. When you see a daughter vine actively choosing a tomato over wheat, it's doing the very thing that gives intelligence its name. The Latin root literally means to choose between. And that's exactly what this plant is doing, making a choice based on information to improve its chances of survival. So all this behavior, remembering, counting, choosing, it all pushes us toward a really big, really provocative question. And it's one that has scientists and philosophers arguing like crazy. This is the big hurdle for a lot of people, right? The gut reaction is no way.
Intelligence needs neurons, it needs a brain, a central computer. Plants don't have any of that stuff. So how can we even be talking about them being intelligent?
Well, researchers like Thilo Henning argue that we're looking at it all wrong. We're biased by our own hardware. He says we should define intelligence by what an organism does. Plants take in information from the world, they process it, they make a decision, and they act on it. In his words, that's not just automatism, that's intelligence.
There's this great idea from a physiologist named Anthony Truavis that really helps clear this up. Think of it this way. Animals who had to move around to find food evolved a compact, centralized brain. It's built for travel. But plants get their food from the sun, so they took a completely different evolutionary path. Their intelligence isn't in one spot, it's distributed throughout their entire body. It's a modular, self-organizing system where the whole organism is the mind.
So, if a plant's mind is its whole body, that brings us right back to our original question. Where in the world does a plant like Nasa poissiana actually store its memories?
The answer is so beautifully simple, and yet it's also incredibly profound. It doesn't put its memories in one specific place. It writes them into its very own form. Just think about it for a second. The way a tree is shaped is a perfect record of its life. That one branch that's kind of shriveled, that tells the story of being shaded out by another tree. The way a root twists and turns underground is a memory of its search for water. The plant's body is a living, breathing map of all its experiences and all the choices it made along the way. And that suggests something truly mind-bending, that a brain is just one strategy that evolution came up with to create a mind. Just one. We're so locked into our own model of consciousness that we assume it's the only way. But maybe it's just one possible solution to the complex problem of being alive. At the end of the day, memory and experience are totally intertwined. If a plant can store information about its world, the timing of a bee's visit, the length of the winter, the direction of the sun, then in a very real sense, it has experienced that world. It has a point of view, a form of subjectivity. So why does any of this matter? It's more than just a cool piece of science trivia. Realizing that plants have memory and a kind of intelligence, it fundamentally changes your perspective. The passive green backdrop of our lives suddenly transforms into this bustling landscape, teeming with millions of individual selves, all experiencing, all remembering, all living their own lives. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The next time you walk through a park or a forest, look closely. Look at the shape of a branch, the twist of a vine. You're not just looking at a plant. You're reading a story. And you can't help but wonder, what other stories are being written all around us in this silent, green world we're just now beginning to understand?